Hey, this is Coach Brian Wright here with another Coach's Corner. I was going to hold off till Monday, but I just couldn't do it. After watching Netflix last night, I've just been walking around kind of talking to myself about what happened. This was, to me, just a travesty of a show. It was clearly match make for one side to win, clearly. There was big paydays. There was a pretty empty arena considering how MMA fills arenas. And there was a lot of aging fighters that were being paid on a nostalgia side of things to put on lackluster performances. This was not a good show. There were people that took unnecessary damage. And I don't think this is in any way, shape, or form a threat to not only the UFC, but the PFL or anybody that's been around for a minute. This show was built by an influencer along the lines of, say, a celebrity boxing kind of model. And there was really no celebrity there. Gina Carano versus Ronda Rousey. I mean, when that fight was over, my son and I got up, we threw the remote, and we were just like, screw this. This was terrible. And went to bed angry. After watching Nate and Mike do their thing, more power to Mike. This dude has figured out how to cash in outside of the UFC. I'm a supporter of what he's trying to do. But it was a terrible fight. It was horrible. Anyone that's going to put him into the cage at this point, I mean, you're complicit in the self-destruction of another human being. Anu, completely unforgettable performance against a guy we'll never think of again. He did what was expected of him, but he looked more like Miocic versus Jones than the guy who beat Miocic. It was not a good fight. It was just a night of terrible, mismatched, lopsided fights. I was not impressed. The production, along the lines of Netflix, the quality of the production was very good. The pacing was horrendous. Listening to Kenny Florian, seeing Kenny Florian, I thought was great. I think Kenny is a underutilized talent in the space. I wish he would get more jobs. I feel like the UFC should reconsider whatever the hell went on between them and bring him back because he would be a very valuable person at the desk. Tyron Woodley was very good. I think that Tyron Woodley, speaking from experience, showed what Ariel Helwani lacks. And what he lacks is actual experience in the arena. He speaks truly as a fan. I mean, I don't hate the guy. I just don't like the way that he communicates more as a fan perspective than anything else. He really doesn't belong on an analytical desk. He's not bringing anything except experience of watching. He hasn't participated outside of stand there with a mic and ask questions. He's good as a sideline reporter, but I don't think he's a desk guy. Outside of that, the pacing was just terrible. The commercials were terrible. There was way too many. There was so much time in between the fights. They're going to do monster numbers. Netflix has a huge audience. They're going to prop up all these numbers and they're going to act as if they did something real and good, but they put on a really horrible show. One other thing, very interesting, the black canvas. It made all the logos stand out so much. It made the hexagon that they used look smaller than it already was, and the logos were rather distracting. There's a reason why the Solid Promotions put down a canvas that they put down. Having that color canvas, the grayish canvas, it lets the logos kind of sit there and it doesn't take away from the eye. You get to actually focus on the fighters. And then when you use a black canvas and say boxing, it's different because those ropes are not 6 feet high. An octagon or a hexagon, they're usually 5'10" to 6 feet high. So the camera angle is always pretty much straight down. Where in boxing, the angle is a little bit lower and the whatever's going on the canvas is not as in your face as it is in MMA due to the nature of the cages. So a lot of lessons to be learned here. I think that we just keep learning that the UFC is the most dominant thing in MMA over and over and over. And to dethrone them is like trying to start a football league and saying you're going to dethrone the NFL. I think you have to be what you are. Stop acting like there's a revolution. Ronda Rousey was just so cringe the entire experience for this. And then afterwards to be crying and hugging and talking about how, Dana's congratulating her and Gina, motivated her and blah, blah, blah. The revolution will just not exist because no one's going to follow Ronda down any path. I think everyone's hoping she goes away. And the thing that I just keep asking myself is, what is the disconnect between the corporate people at a company like Netflix and the rest of us in terms of being able to be sold? I mean, Jake Paul and his partner in MVP are doing a tremendous job selling a bunch of suits, ideas that, it's adding up to viewers, I guess. But as a real business model to expand the sport or do any of the things they pretend they're doing, it's just not there. They're bringing in people that we barely care about to put on terrible fights. And at the end of the day, you don't get too many at bats when the fights are bad. And last night, the fights were terrible. I watched the UFC card this morning, and my son and I were like kicking ourselves. We could have gone to bed earlier and we actually would have been entertained while learning something watching that UFC card versus the MVP card. MVP does another show. I'm sure I'll watch begrudgingly. But yeah, I was disgusted. And honestly, Robles, Despain, that dude's a monster. To put JDS in with him, man, it was disgusting. That was gross. Despain dispatched him violently. I don't care how much money you're paying him to get knocked out like that at that point of his life. The people that thought that was going to be a good idea, it's disgusting. You clearly were trying to build Despain up, and now you're putting him in a position where he's probably going to want to fight Ngannou. He doesn't deserve to fight Ngannou, but the crazy part is he actually has knockout power, so he's probably dangerous for Ngannou. But that JDS fight, I would actually rather watch Power Slap, which I have like a horrible cringe feel about, than watch what happened last night with Despain and JDS. And even with Mike Perry and Nate Diaz, that was really gross. To know the shape that Nate Diaz is in, to know the mental condition that he's in, and to put him into any kind of cage to fight anybody now, that's just ridiculous. This guy is burnt out. His brain is clearly not all there. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just so clear where things are at there. But yeah, so MVP, horribly disappointing. I'm sure they'll come back and do something. But Ronda is not going to be Dana. Jake Paul is going to Jake Paul. Probably the most interesting move for them to make is going to be Jake will probably fight Mike Perry in MMA, or he'll fight Francis Ngannou in boxing. If he fights Francis Ngannou with little gloves on, Francis is going to break whatever's left of his jaw. You can clearly see that Jake Paul is just constantly posturing to bring eyeballs to the table off the things he does. This is a celebrity boxing model that is now being applied to MMA while they're talking about a revolution, while they're talking about changing the game, while they're talking about fighter pay inequality and all this kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. You brought a bunch of guys in to get killed. You may have paid them better than they've been paid as of late, but at what cost? At what cost are you putting this show on? And that's what I wish people would ask, but the higher-ups at Netflix are clearly not going to ask that. Ronda Rousey doesn't care. She's going to go back to her farm, and she's going to talk a lot of shit about the UFC and how it was better before, and dump on Hunter and say Dana's her buddy. And quite honestly, with the Dana talk, I want to see receipts. Show me the text messages. Show me that Dana really is that gracious, and show me that he hates the White House card and he hates the corporate structure and all that crap. Because if I'm not mistaken, Dana is one of the main architects behind the creation of TKO and Endeavor and all the financial things that the UFC has done. And he's profited greatly off of them. And he's taken a sport, which was a fringe sport, which his friends invested in, then sold it for billions, and then turned it into what is now the NFL of MMA. I don't think he's going to be texting Ronda Rousey at any point to complain about much of anything. Maybe he said to her, good luck, have a good fight, I'm glad you're getting paid, but I doubt he was critical of the giant that he created. Yeah, Ronda, bring some receipts before you run your mouth again, because I don't believe you. So, all right, this is Brian Wright, the coach. I am really disgusted. I wanted to do this tomorrow after it sat a little bit longer, but I just couldn't do that. I'm really over it. Yeah. All right, Brian Wright, coach, again. Peace. I'm out of here.